Hey, so I'm kind of revamping the Mormon Truth video statement of purpose intro that I used on the Dodger Game channel because it goes into the reason for Mormonism, the reason for a restoration, the the Christianity dilemma and so forth. Not just apostasy and restoration, but the whole theological premise for Christianity and Mormonism. Really, I review a little bit in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and use part of that video and introduce things from there. So we've got that, and then I'm putting this on the Mormon Truth videos channel instead of the Dodger Game channel, because I started to call that the Mormon Truth Video Library and so forth, but it was, wasn't actually the name of the channel. So we got the best of loading up the best of what I had on this channel, and so I'm not going to go over what's in there so much, just the fact that there really wasn't a really comprehensive collection of videos that I'm aware of. That actually Flackerman did a pretty good job on a lot of things, but there's things that maybe he didn't, and things that I think I do differently and more in depth and so forth. But LDS.org was not providing what they promised to deliver. They were not providing straightforward essays, and certainly not unbiased. They didn't use the words unbiased, but they said that God didn't want you to have just one set of opinions, and then they went out and garnered whatever they wanted to distract us from the real issues, and used apologetics instead of balanced and fair essays on describing issues that are problematic for the LDS Church to explain. Actually, they're beyond problematic, because for a person to believe that an unchanging, just, holy, and all-knowing God guides the LDS Church is difficult, if not impossible, to reconcile to various issues that are printed up on the church's webpage on LDS.org. Though they may be hidden, though you may not see them advertised on the homepage, these are problematic issues that used to be dealt with at FARMS, BYU, Foundation for Apologetic Research on Mormonism, Mormon Studies, or something like that. And they got rid of Dan Peterson, and he's over at Fair Mormon now, Unfair Mormon maybe. And they weren't answering the questions honestly, the problems. They were deflecting and using character assassination, smear tactics on people oftentimes, and using complex arguments. They were men of many words and spoke much flattery into the people, and they still do over at at Fair Mormon. But I'm actually into documenting on the issues with the Book of Abraham. Not just the fact that it wasn't written by Abraham 2000 BC and those sort of things. The church has gone ahead and say, well, Joseph Smith just got, inspired from the papyrus that had nothing to do with Abraham. It had nothing to do with him, but he just got inspired. So what if he spent $2,400 of someone else's money to buy it? Well, or didn't translate the book of Joseph there either. They try to ignore anything that they can't really handle, but I deal with the problems in the text there that I don't see handled on the internet. The linguistics that are just not, they're not reconcilable to having been written 2000 BC by someone who knew anything about history or linguistic development. There's just stuff that's a lot closer to the 19th century in there. It doesn't work. Watch it and see. And I've got it in the video discussing things proven from the scriptures. And I got it on the new channel. I had it on the old channel on the Prove All Things. So, you've got that. You've got Joseph Smith's relationships with all these women, which the church uses arguments to kind of lead things away from what the real issues are there. He didn't keep his covenants with Emma. That's pretty clear. And so the church wants us to believe that that was okay, that God commanded him to break his covenants and take other men's wives and teenage girls. Yeah, everything we've heard about plural marriage or polygamy has basically been a myth. So I get into the details and I document things on the scriptures, the changing doctrines in the church, the real history of Joseph Smith, before he got into making the Book of Mormon, the whole seer stone business and mysticism and necromancy, sorcery, being a magician and his family, being involved with that, the Freemasonry, the real truth about what, going on with the temple and how that affected many things and brought a chain reaction of various occurrences in the church which have continued to be problematic. The DNA issue, which the church tries to skirt now because the Lamanites apparently don't exist, and 99.5% or so, very close to that, the Native Americans tested are from Siberia and came long before Adam left any garden and weren't washed away by the flood. They try not to talk about that. They just try to say, well, you know what? Lamanites disappeared into an existing base of people. They don't mention the obvious facts, or what should be obvious, which I just mentioned. No, they say that, maybe there's a trace of them somewhere. Yeah, that's right. Well, if you destroyed Genesis, you destroyed the whole thing, because Joseph Smith, reconfirmed that the Genesis narrative was correct, was historical. And watch the videos in there. Watch the videos in the Mormon Truth video channel, and there are tons on the Dodger Game channel too. But now I've also got something with a name that correlates to the material. So let's get in the rest of this video. It'll talk about the need for Mormonism, a theological basis, and I think it'll actually be pretty good. So welcome. So basically, what's this all about? Just let's do a quick rehash on why do we have the LDS Church? Well, starting point on that would be basically most people joining the church were already somewhat believing as in some kind of Christian doctrine, believing that the Bible was at least mostly true, the Old and New Testaments, and so the thought here is that people were looking for a restoration of a divine organization, the ancient order that God instigated with Adam and that his children practiced and so forth. And then, we've got the whole New Testament scene, which tries to merge two different religions there in Christianity, but basically, Jesus being the Savior, the Christian religion, somehow the Christians have tried to meld that, and Joseph Smith goes more into the ancient order, but I don't know if anybody really knows how many people the Catholic Church has murdered. But 1 Nephi chapter 13 identifies the great and abominable church that slayeth the saints of God and tortureth them, etc. It's pretty brutal what is said there and what history has told us. So there was a need for restoration, we are told, and when we look at Christian doctrine and Catholic doctrine being different from some of your Eastern religions, who base your eternal reward, should we exist after this life, on your works, your kindness, the way you treat your fellow creature. Whereas in Christianity, basically you can be horrible all your life, be wicked, and then confess the name of Jesus. Now that's not really what the New Testament preaches, but that's basically the Christian religion. Confess Jesus with your lips and you are saved. If you don't, you could be innocent, a baby. Catholics didn't baptize you in time. They say, sorry, you died as an infant, you're burning in hell. You could do good all your life, but not believe in the Christian dogma, and you're going to hell, they teach. Not only that, you've got so many Christian religions that basically if you choose the wrong one, you're burning in hell. And that's what God has given us, according to the Christian religion. If you've got 1,000 churches, you've got 1,000 to 1 chances against you. But you're not going to burn in hell is like winning the lottery. That doesn't sound very fair and kind. So when Joseph Smith introduced new doctrine, not in the Book of Mormon, because that's a very Christian book, but in the Swedenborgian doctrines, such as we find in section 76 in the Doctrine and Covenants, and thereafter, in maybe section, was it 138 or something, basically we get another chance if we haven't had an adequate chance, according to the Lord, to accept the gospel in the next existence in the spirit world, with valiant priesthood holding elders from this church preaching to people, and faithful people doing baptisms for the dead in the temples to provide a chance so that God didn't actually burn in hell 99% of his children or more that exist on the earth. There's a way provided. It seems to make sense. The plan of salvation seems to give us a sense of purpose, the premortal existence and future godhood. Families can be forever together forever through Heavenly Father's plan. It all seems to make so much sense. And people left Catholicism for obvious reasons. A church that's burning people to death doesn't sound very divine, shall we say. There were other things. They just noticed, something's really wrong here, and leaving the church is difficult as well. Well, so the gospel was restored, we are told. But now we know that it has been asserted that God himself, or Jesus Christ, speaks through his prophets, whether by mine own voice or the voice of my servants. It is the same. You read Doctrine and Covenants section 1, which used to be the preface to the Book of Commandments, before they changed some of the revelations, changed what Jesus had said to something else. Jesus now said something new, trashed the Book of Commandments, and put the revised revelations in the Doctrine and Covenants. So, continuing to speak just a little bit more about Christianity, basically, if you don't believe the dogma, then you're going to burn in hell. And what is that dogma? The dogma basically is more of an allegiance to worship this particular God in a particular way through a particular vehicle, broker, or a church. Vicar of God, essentially. A brokership of God. You have to go through the broker, the Catholic Church, or some other one that claims to be the one true church. The chances of you finding the one true church with so many don't seem real good. That's why we've got the afterlife program in the church. That seems to make so much sense. But if you don't believe that this wonderful, all-powerful, all-knowing, unchanging, loving God could allow his children to return to him in heaven, in a celestial world, he couldn't do that unless he provided a plan whereby his most innocent and sinless child was to be murdered by other of his children. Otherwise, you can't go back and live with God. And if you don't believe that, you're going to hell. Doesn't matter how good you've been to your fellow man. Doesn't matter at all. You are going to burn. Well, in Mormondom, at least the burning only lasts for those folks until the end of the millennium. Then you get resurrected into the telestial or terrestrial kingdom, depending on, well, actually, the celestial. Terrestrial, you weren't burning, at least. It's a little more lenient than Christianity. You got to say it makes more sense. That's true. But just as with the Catholic Church, when we assert that Jesus Christ is guiding the church with his divine attributes and revealing truth through living prophets, then we expect that he's going to tell truth and be consistent in his revelations. For 107, verse 54, where the Lord appears to all the patriarchs and all the good people at Adam on Diamond 3 years before Adam died. And they'd already been living with him for the last 240 years in Zion, and he'd been face to face with Enoch, and Enoch could move mountains and rivers, but Brother Jared's told by the Lord, like 800 years later, from the latest event of those hundreds of years, that he was the first guy to ever have enough faith even to see him. So who's lying? Is it Jesus or Moses or Enoch or Joseph Smith or Jesus to Joseph Smith? Or somebody's not telling the truth. And that's just one of the many things that we've seen. And then we see, what about the Joseph Smith history? The whole polygamy story. Get past the first, let's not worry about the first vision stories right now. What about, so God commanded him to break the covenants that he made with his wife? The terms upon which Emma agreed to marry him, the terms of a contract which, according to section 132, is good until death, do them part. It's a valid contract, and the Lord just said, break it. Because when she married him, he must have said, I promise to cleave unto her only, forsaking all other women. So the Lord told him to break that covenant. The Lord told him to break the laws of the land in all the states that he lived in with regard to plural marriage. Were they even married? He was practicing concubinage, to be more honest. The whole marriage thing is really not very honest.
And what about the other men's wives? I mean, 11 women on the LDS site FamilySearch.org, I believe, 11 of them, they're other men's wives. And Joseph took them. They're sealed to him. So the apologists say, well, he didn't make out with them. Oh, okay. He just stole them for all eternity. Well, so if these guys are going to make the celestial kingdom, they need a new wife. Sorry, honey. Enjoy life with Joseph. Oh, the kids, they don't want a new mom? Think about it. If we think, how much sense do some of these things really make? And of course, he didn't tell the truth about what he was doing the whole time. You know, right before he died, he said, they accuse me of having 7 wives, but I can find but one. William Law says I'm an adulterer, and I'll prove them all perjurers. But we know that that's not the case. The church websites even admit that he had a bunch of women, and they just say they're wives. But they weren't wives. And what he starts, so the Lord commanded him to impregnate Fanny Alger, 16-year-old orphan girl, staying at their home, doing a little nannying, and he got her pregnant. The George calls her the first polygamous wife, as they call it. She was never married to him. But Emma kicked her out of the house, pregnant girl, orphan girl on the street, with Joseph's child inside her, to grow up without the child's father, fatherless, you know, till she maybe married somebody. Is that what the Lord commanded? Is that raising up seed unto the Lord? Does that really make sense? Is that one of those things you put on the shelf and just said, you know, I'll have faith and then God will tell me in the next life? Is that, you know, or I'll see what, you know, what the church apologists have to say to make it sound better. Are we capable of thinking about these things? Do they really sound right to you? Well, so we see everybody, many of us probably have got something we put on the shelf because it just didn't seem right, but we try to exercise what we're told is faith. You know, well, the Catholic Church, guess what? They told people to exercise faith too, but you know, people could figure out there's something wrong. There's something wrong there. Well, Jesus is supposed to function by his own laws. God will cease to be God if he doesn't follow his own laws, says the Book of Mormon. He says he's unchanging and his course is one eternal round. D&C 93:21 says, truth is knowledge of things as they are, as they were, and as they are to come. So then how can what's true today be falsehood tomorrow? How can what Brigham Young said was absolute truth, God's law, is now called theory? The Adam God doctrine, he said you'd go to hell if you didn't believe it. Now, it's called the Adam God theory, a false theory. We disavow it. We disavow all sorts of things. We disavow the belief that dark skin is a sign of God's disfavor or curse. That's what the brethren say. It's right there, LDS.org, Gospel Topic Essays, Race and Priesthood, near the bottom there under the Church Today. Well, a quick look at the scriptures, like 2 Nephi chapter 5, God cursed the Lamanites with a skin of blackness. Very explicitly. And goes over it and over it. And then on, you know, in Alma chapter 3 says it was a mark he put upon them that was a curse of their dark skins. God created a new race through cursing them for their unrighteousness. So that essay doesn't bother to mention, you know, it doesn't include using the scriptures, which contradict absolutely what the brethren say the truth is. So they are saying that what was in the scriptures is not the truth. What was in the Book of Mormon, and what's in the Book of Moses and Book of Abraham, these are all scripturally based doctrines with regards to race, and they say it's not true. So, if the scriptures aren't true, who lied? Jesus or Joseph Smith? Either way, that's where these guys derive their authority. So there's a problem. Well, there are problems manifest in many particular issues, and so the Church Apologetics was, you know, Fair and Farms, well, Farms officially, and that turned into Maxwell Institute. Now they hid it on LDS.org in the Gospel Topic Essays, Apologetics in Thin Disguise. They promise straightforward essays, not using just one opinion, and, you know, in-depth, straightforward. You know what? We've looked at them, and we document it's exactly opposite of what they say. It's straight apologetics. What's called arguing one particular viewpoint, and they use sophistry, but they do not like to use the scriptures. They do not seem to like to use much pertinent information. They use a lot of fluff. They say the brethren, the prophets, just basically were following the crowd so far as the priesthood is concerned with regard to race. They blame it on that, not on the scriptures. No, they were just following the crowd. Isn't that what prophets are supposed to do, follow the crowd? Well, there are a number of these topics that are not giving us honest answers through correlated church material, lesson manuals, whether paper or digital, and what we receive on LDS.org is information control, which is practiced by all high control organizations, Catholic Church, Jehovah's Witnesses, Scientology, the Moonies. We have to open our eyes and see what's around us. And we use LDS.org and primary source documents so you can be the judge. The information is available. It's not like they say on the Gospel Topic Essays, we just can't figure it out. There isn't adequate information. Just have faith, pray about it. You'll get the burning in your bosom. The problem like that is that you can cure your testimony with Rolaids. So I think what we need to do is look at all the subjects we've got in this large library now of documented information on all sorts of issues, from the Book of Abraham to the multiple visions to plural marriage and concubinage, the real story there. Changing doctrines, deliberately covering up the changing of doctrines, documented, and who's doing it, including Gordon Hinckley, Joseph Fielding Smith, etc. And you can see what really happened. We're not about sophistry, we're about laying the truth on the line. And you can read those Gospel Topic Essays. They're trying to inoculate people against finding out what the truth is. There are tactics that are used, information control, behavior control in the church and many other churches like the J-Dubs. Sometimes it's easier to see the beam in your brother's eye rather than your own, actually. It's easier to recognize coercive persuasion techniques when you're seeing it in someone else's religion. You think, oh, mine is just a coincidence that the Lord would use, hypnotic sales language repetitions and all sorts of, tactics, character assassination of anyone who dares to violate the sanctity of the Messiah complex that the leaders have, that all truth comes from the brethren, and when the prophet has spoken, the discussion is over. That's not unique to Mormonism. The J-Dubs do it. David Koresh did it. Charles Manson did it. James Jones, Jonestown. Scientology. It's something that high control organizations do. They label people and discredit people who share truth that upsets the apple cart. They also give part of the information and put a spin on it, so when you come across a subject that's a challenge, you think, the brethren have already explained that. And like Joseph Fielding Smith said, that Adam God doctrine, he was misquoted. Well, read the doctrine, read the Journal of Discourses. It's in multiple discourses there, from Brigham Young, Jedediah Grant, Heber C. Kimball. Read what they said on the blood atonement. They definitely encouraged the saints to kill members who apostatized. That was an unforgivable sin. It's outer darkness for you, baby. So the only way to avoid eternal damnation is to pay for your own sins, because Jesus' blood isn't going to cover it, but yours will. Dig your own grave. It will slit your throat. Yeah, they actually did that. It wasn't a good time to disagree with Brigham. It wasn't. And there are plenty of primary source documents, people that were close to Brigham Young, believed he was a prophet, had their calling election made sure, and killed people according to the orders of the priesthood. And anyway, I've documented stuff. You can evaluate it yourself. I'm not using sophistry. I'm not slick like the Gospel Topic essay writers, who whatever they said has been approved by the First Presidency and the Council of the 12 to basically be the word of the Lord. Read section 1 of the D&C. Pretty heavy-duty proclamation. So what we have to expect is that these people speak the word of the Lord. So there's no possibility of contradicting yourself if you are perfect. And when revelation comes from the Lord, then there's a problem. There's a problem when yesterday's truth is today's false theories. New prophets trump old prophets. No, truth is supposed to be eternal. That doesn't work. A lot of things that don't work. Anyway, we just We just put it out there. You evaluate it. Hope this is a great resource for you.
Welcome, and subscribe, like, comment. Love it all. Thanks. Bye.